Thank you. So I was asked to talk about the commissioning challenges for new models. I run a very small company that's trying to run a nurse-led managing team in Cambridgeshire. And so what I'm talking about is the challenges of commissioning a new model in the first instance, but once you've actually secured that contract in the first instance, how do you sustain it beyond the pilot period? For us, we're trapped in the short-term commissioning cycles within public services. We tend to look at things in a year. And in terms of new models, you cannot underestimate the time it takes to implement a new model and then embed the change and realise the benefits. And at the very minimum, you'd need something like 2 years, but realistically, much longer than that to truly begin to see the benefits, particularly when there's cultural change involved as well. The other issue is that for the services that we're providing, there are many partners in the system. And to invest to save, how do you identify who is going to put up the money? And there's usually a lot of debate about what the outcomes will be, and therefore who will benefit from the savings made. And it's really difficult to tell what those savings will be, because actually in multi-systems, you know, the acute service will benefit from reduction in admissions. The county council might benefit from reduction in the dependence on long-term domiciliary care or movement into residential care. GPs might benefit from reduction in appointment times. Community services, reduction in the amount of visits and the length of visits. And so it's often very difficult to agree who will be the people who put up the money in the first place, or if they're putting in, or everybody putting into the pot, what proportion of money people will put into the pot. The other debate is, will cash actually be released from new models of care? And because systems are so complex, actually cash is often not released, rather capacity. So it makes it easier to manage existing demand, but cash isn't released back into the system. So when you've got systems that are financially challenged, then again, agreeing who will put in the money, or how much money, or can we find the extra money to make that change, it sometimes doesn't happen when you can't identify actually cash release. The other problem is that once you've actually secured investment and piloted something or tested something for a period of time, then in terms of evaluation and agreement to sustain that and embed that in the long term depends on how the quantitative and qualitative evaluation. And actually, the systems we've got in place in the first place, we find it very difficult to benchmark what services already exist, because we don't, in the community particularly, the NHS uses block contracts, and so we don't know what the unit cost is. And there are a lot of hidden costs related to the way we commission. So when we commission on numbers, the quantity of visits that we make, then actually, for example, if you are looking after somebody with a leg ulcer and you're doing a visit twice a week for a year, and you are commissioned on the number of visits you make, as opposed to actually curing the leg ulcer. So if you spend a half-hour visit twice a week, or do you spend 3 hours up front for the first 6 weeks to really understand what the underlying causes of that problem is and cure the leg ulcer? So you use a lot of time up front, which is deemed expensive, but actually you prevent the long-term the duplication of visit. And those costs are lost in the way we currently commission. And therefore, when you come to evaluate new services, they look very expensive. Also, there's the perceived risk of new organisational models. So we've talked today about self-managed teams, and there's a lot of suspicion in public services around the new models, concerns around governance and regulation, and small organisations doing something different come across political issues, the perceived risks of privatisation, concern about sustainability, and just the devolved power to new organisations doing things from a human perspective, from a personalised perspective, from the ground up, rather than the large organisations doing things from top down. So the challenge, I guess, is how do we do things differently? How do we commission differently to enable new models to start off and then be sustained over a significant period of time so we can genuinely make a change to the way we deliver services? And really, Toby mentioned about the importance of building trusting relationships in the system so we can take risks with how we commission, risks with how we invest the money, and really give organisations time to show the impact of doing things differently. And obviously, most systems, well, all systems suffer from these problems, but many systems have successfully managed to do things differently. And we've heard examples of people doing things differently within social care and housing. I'd love to hear whether have people successfully managed to do things differently within the NHS. Thank you.